invented by Christian Sharps back in 1848 for the falling block breech loading rifle, and it came in both carbines and full-length rifles. Most popular was the carbine, mostly used by cavalrymen. Later to be used by most famously Berdan sharpshooters of the Union Army. They would have the full 30-inch barrels. Well, this is the carbine version of it. Now, it is a breech loader. It's not a traditional muzzle loader like they mostly had in Civil War, and it did use cartridges, but not the typical cartridges people are familiar with. They're going to be paper cartridges. So this is the beginning of self-contained ammunition. This is not the first instance of this, but this is just an advancement of what it was. So you didn't have to tear off the end of this. You could simply insert this into the breech, close it up, and put a musket cap on it, and it'll fire. As you can see in the paper here, it contains the powder charge. I have a little wad in there to help with the fouling, and then the bullet itself, all contained in this simple wrapper. On the back end there, the flame will go through and ignite the powder charge and send the bullet down the barrel. All a totally combustible, self-contained cartridge. Very revolutionary for the time, especially when everybody's still using muzzle loaders. The Sharps is a very simple design. All you do is you put it on the half cock. You bring the breech block down, insert a cartridge on there, bring the breech block back up, cap the nipple, take it to full cock, and then you'll fire. Give you a close-up look of the operation here. So with the big hammer on the side, put on the half cock, and reaching down, get a hold of that, and it'll drop the breech block there. And you can see that you can load straight into the chamber there. So you'll take one of these paper cartridges, load it straight in through the back, and you'll bring it up, close the action, cap it off right there on the nipple, full cock, and you're ready to fire. Now there's two different schools of thought on how people like to load their cartridges. A lot of people will load up their cartridges just a little bit longer than the chamber, so there will be a little paper tail on the end there, so when you bring the breech block up, it'll shear the end off, leaving some powder right up against the flash hole. When you touch off the musket cap, the flame goes right into it, and boom, off she goes. That's a little bit problematic for me because it gives off a lot of fouling. There's inconsistent loads. You don't know how much powder you're actually spilling. It'll ignite some of the powder up there, and then some of the powder will get in. There's a little tiny gap there, and it'll slow the action down. Mine, I make them chamber length, and I use a little booster charge on the end of it. The main charge is 55 grains, and then 10 grains of triple FG for the booster charge. So when the flash goes through there, it'll light off the finer powder. Reason I do that is these carbines are notorious for having bad ignition. A lot of times you'll just get a pop from the cap instead of a boom. So I found that through some trial and error, the triple FG booster on there gives me pretty reliable ignition, almost I'd say 99% of the time. The genius behind the Sharps is its simplicity. Like we just went over was how easy the action works. All you gotta do is open up that breech block, put your round in there, close it up, cap it, and then you can fire the weapon. This enabled a cavalryman to easily carry these light carbines. They could load on horseback and fire without having to stuff any rounds down the muzzle. Didn't have to worry about any of that. They could quickly open the action up, load one in, and fire. Now these were later known to be the Buffalo rifles of the West. They basically kept the same design of the Sharps, and all they did was make a conversion here from the ignition when they moved to metallic cartridges in the 4570 on up, and they changed it from the musket cap ignition to have like a button that would go down to the firing pin. So the hammer would come down, push the button, which would push the firing pin into the primer of the cartridge, and then that would fire it. But other than that, the rifle remained unchanged. Now the sights on these are pretty basic for the time period. It's got a simple ladder type sight, and on the base setting, these are set in 100-yard increments. So it's a 100-yard set increment from the base setting, and then if you lift the sight up, kind of hard to do this one-handed. If you lift the sight up, you can range for further distances by using the slider.